Buddies! Hey, welcome back. It's Concert Buddy. Thanks for taking some time to check out this episode of Vinyl Community Podcasts on the podcast channel. Or if you're on YouTube watching me on my Concert Buddy channel, thank you very much. What you're about to experience coming up is a wonderful conversation I had with one of the elder statesmen of the vinyl community on YouTube. And he's not one of the OGs. He didn't start this 10, 15 years ago like some other folks, but I'd like to think of Norman Maslov, or Mazzy, if you know him well, as like the connective tissue of the vinyl community. Because if it's a new channel, if it's an older channel, if it's a big channel or it's a little channel, most folks in the vinyl community on YouTube are at least familiar with Mazzy. And I think that's a testament to not only what he produces on his channel, but how he conducts himself and really engages with other folks within the community, not just on YouTube, but to me, again, the vinyl community extends well beyond the walls or the screens of YouTube. All that said, I recently was up in Seattle, his neck of the woods, and he was kind enough to invite my family and I into his home, so I got to actually see the shrine, the mausoleum of Maslov, his own record collection. It's a lifetime. It's a testament to his passion, enthusiasm for music. I didn't get to spend as much time poking through the racks as I probably would have otherwise, but still extremely thankful for Mazzy, not just for the conversation you're about to listen to here shortly, but also his graciousness and his hospitality while we're in Seattle. So thank you, Mazzy, for that. Anyway, in this conversation, I kind of asked him about his experience on YouTube, what drew him to YouTube and start making videos and sharing his different stories and tales through that medium. But also, one thing he said while I was up in Seattle that really stuck with me is talking about what happens to our collections when we leave the celestial plane. And, what if our offspring are not exactly as passionate about our hobby as we are? So anyway, we get into that as well. And then we ended up with a couple fun rapid-fire questions. Enough jibba jabba. You came here for the goods. Here we go.
And you thought vinyl left. You're listening to the Vinyl Community Podcasts. Everything vinyl.
Welcome in to another episode of Vinyl Community Podcast. This is Concert Buddy. Thanks for joining us. I am joined today by one of my favorites, probably one of your favorites in the vinyl community. That's the one and the only Norman Maslov. How you doing today, Mazzy?
I'm doing great. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks for
Thanks for visiting Seattle a few weeks ago.
Yeah. I was gonna say long time no see, but it's only been 2 weeks. So again, thank you for your hospitality.
You entered my record room domain, the record library. It's like the Xanadu here in Seattle.
Well, I noticed that right after I left, but a few days later, Tim from University of Vinyl came through, and you better start charging admission. I feel I'm
ready to do a Airbnb hybrid of people into vinyl that can stay for a shitload of money. Oh, can I say that? Sorry,
you can.
And I'll drive them around doing the tourist sites. We'll go to the Jimi Hendrix gravesite. We'll go to the clubs from Singles, the movie, the Seattle movie Singles. You can see where Kurt Cobain, where his demise, and some of the clubs at the whole grunge scene, West Seattle, where several of Pearl Jam members live, and the Easy Street record store with the cafe, and all the record. We have like 15 plus record stores here.
It's fantastic. Yeah, we hit a good percentage of them, and even some you recommended. So I appreciate it. Royal Records was one that was a big win after we.
Yeah, my adopted city. It's not my old San Francisco, but San Francisco is not my old San Francisco either. So there we go.
True story. Well, let's kind of get into it. The theme for these kind of conversations, I call it Mind of the Record Collector, and we'll touch on some certain points that kind of hit that. But to kind of launch into the conversation where I got to know you, and where a lot of people probably got to know you as well, or some who may be new to you, is your operation, your content that you put out on YouTube. How did that start, and what was the motivation to just start talking about records and music on YouTube?
Well, a segment of my I have, like some people, but I have several playlists. So if you go to my channel, Norman Maslov, it's actually just under Norman Maslov. There are playlists like featured artists. There's a jazz playlist. There's obviously, I'm a Beatle collector, but I'm not a Beatle channel, all Beatle in. But also have a series that kind of accidentally started called, there's Whack-A-Mole, the random picks. And I didn't obviously invent random picks, but I just used it, Whack-A-Mole as a branding, and it kind of caught on,
Sure.
But Memories of a Vinyl Junkie is very autobiographical, and I talk about myself. And so if you're on YouTube, you got to have a ego to begin with. But I have a history because I literally was born and grew up in San Francisco. To my point of view, the right time, the right place.
Sure.
Into the 60s, I saw the Airplane and the Dead and the Psychedelic and the Winterland shows and all the concerts we can get into later. Some of them I saw. But in terms of YouTube, I would go on YouTube, and there was a German guy who's doesn't do, not Michael 45, but he doesn't do YouTube videos anymore, Vinyl Community, but he used to do kind of jazz things. And I started seeing his videos, and started following it, and then he stopped doing videos, but other ones popped up. And after a while, I decided to do a video. So I came downstairs in this room, my record library. Some of you are watching it, some are just listening. So the YouTube version, you can see the visual of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just did an introduction where I am at. I think I did 1 or 2 videos, and then I just got busy. I'm self-employed as a photo agent, and I got busy, and I didn't do a second or third one until a year later.
Oh,
yeah. And then I just got into it, and I just got sort of addicted. I liked showcasing my collection. I have this great collection, and of course, we all have, those of us who have these good collections, you want to share them. At least I want to share them.
sure.
I love when people come over, we can play records, but you only can, have so many people come over and play records. So sharing this collection I've amassed, having been in the record business for about a decade, from the early 70s to the early 80s, and then collecting beyond, and also my San Francisco stories, just became a great thing. So I got into it, and I got addicted. And I remember I started making a ton of videos in a short amount of time. And I remember there was a video by one of my favorite YouTube people, Vinyl Richie. I love Vinyl Richie. He's not just the punk guy that people think he is, and that side, but he's got a no holds barred, whatever I'm going to say, attitude. But I really like him. We become, I think, virtual Vinyl Community friends. And he mentioned, this Mazzy guy. He makes too many videos. They couldn't make videos, and they peter out, and they don't make videos anymore. And I kind of remembered that, but I kept making videos, and it just kind of grew, and it grew from there. And then people apparently like it. Some people
do, and I think you've amassed a loyal following. If anything, I think your sub count's over 20,000, 25, 26. I think last time I looked at
26.
it. So there are people out there. Do you think? Part of it is obviously your storytelling, your subject matter expertise, but during COVID, I think a lot of people were looking for stuff to do, and I think as somebody making videos, it was probably an outlet for you, but also a lot of people were connecting through the videos, commenting, making videos, response videos, all that kind of stuff.
Well, the lockdown thing was, I think, for all of us, it was something for us to do, and I really dived in big time. My business kind of literally stopped. My business, I'm a photo agent, and photo productions stopped. It's not like, I can work at home, and I do work at home, but the productions to go out to do a food shoot or a lifestyle shoot, you couldn't get people together. So it stopped. Mm-hmm. And this was something I was able to jump into even more, and it did grow. But the irony is I don't do clickbait headlines or titles for the sake of clickbait titles. However, because of a situation, I did a video, and it was titled, "When Did Eric Clapton Become a Wanker?" It was because of a result of a woman in Germany, I believe, sold a Eric Clapton bootleg. It was from a CD that her husband had, and he had died like 8 years earlier. She put it online and tried to sell it, and the lawyers reached out to her. And now maybe she should have pulled it, but she didn't. She got a little
cease and desist,
yeah. She didn't, and she tried to sell. And they sued her for like £6,000 or dollars or whatever it was, and she lost. And I get the whole idea of counterfeits and counterfeiting and bootleggers. Counterfeits and bootlegging are two different things. But come on, it's like hitting a sledgehammer on an ant. At the same time, Clapton did his anti-vaccine thing, which I don't want to get into too much here. But anyway, I thought it'd be a fun video, and I did this it was a rant video, and I think it's over 100,000 views by now. But it was just one of those views. It brought people in. Now, am I proud of that? It was a tongue in cheek thing, and of course, I even did later my top 10. Um, I do ranking videos too occasionally, and I did my top 10 Eric Clapton wanking videos, wanking albums, because I love Cream albums. I love the stuff he did with John Mayall. I love the Yardbirds. I loved Derek and the Dominoes, his first solo album. After about 461 Ocean, a few of those, I got a little tired of him, but I love him as an artist. And, that kind of brought people in. And luckily, a lot of them stayed and watched the other things. So I didn't do it purposely to do that. But now, every year now, I have a top 10 wankers of the year at the end of the year. That's kind of my list. And people seem to like it and realize it's for enjoyment. Some people get wrapped up in it and take it way too seriously. And you have to, if they're watching it, especially, it's different listening on a podcast here. They see my expressions and my little smirk. It's tongue in cheek. People will I get comments. Oh, the wanker's the guy with the glasses and the hat and the beard. It's not Eric Clapton, and that's fine too. I take that unless it's mean spirited. I don't really care. So that made it explode even more.
Well, one thing I really admire about you and your influence or your effort on YouTube is that, and you're kind of doing it now. For folks who can't see this, you're wearing a T-shirt. It's Women in Vinyl, right? Like you're very, very quick to promote the community because that's a podcast. Now I don't even look at it as a competing podcast. It's just another podcast about records that you've championed for as long as I can remember.
Let me just give a little plug to Women in Vinyl. They're an organization that's been around about 4 to 5 years now, and my friend, the archivist, is on the board of it, and it supports women getting in the business, whether in pressing plants and retail sales and mastering, in marketing, in working literally in pressing plants as a press master or something, and get more women in the business. It's a support thing. And you can go to their site, listen to their podcast, buy a T-shirt or something. And they're a great organization. And they actually, end of the year, have a book coming out. The archivist edited it, and Jen, the head or the organization, really kind of wrote it with these interviews and features on various women around the world in the vinyl community. I mean, the bigger vinyl world, but as jobs, as legitimate jobs, not just us collectors,
Yeah, no, but to that end, one thing, not just with that organization and group that you're just talking about there, but even on YouTube.
Because you're going to link them below in this podcast.
I'm happy to. I'm happy to. That's no problem. Actually, matter of fact, I saw a viral video that I had this morning, another channel I follow, and it was a woman working in a pressing plant. But all
there
that
you go. It happens. It's not a rarity.
No, not at all. But no, to that end, what I was going to say is to make the connection about you're always quick to elevate or promote or just mention other channels, other things within the community. And I think, for lack of a better word, it makes you like the connective tissue of the vinyl community. And what I mean by that is that, and I have a theory, when these channels get over a certain size and they kind of shift their priorities and so forth, they kind of forget the little people. But one thing that's always been great about you is that you'll come on the live streams. You will find these videos in the vinyl tag and you'll promote these new channels that help give them air and help really kind of foster the sense of community that I think is one of the things I really enjoy about what we do. What would you say to that?
Well, I try to do that. However, the only thing that I will say is when I do a video, I consciously think that I'm not doing this just for the vinyl community. And I don't take it for granted that everyone's watching even knows what the vinyl quote community is. There's no real vinyl community.
Agreed.
You don't sign up. You don't get a membership or a decoder ring or anything. It is, I want to reach out to people watching on YouTube in general. So even when, some YouTubers or some vinyl community people do contests or themes or threads, I'll only do them. Not that I want to take away from another individual and really support them, but I'll do them if I think they have appeal beyond just the vinyl community, like a music lover. If it's about, your favorite live concert records or something, I think that appeals to a bigger audience. So
sure.
I won't direct it to, hey, vinyl community, hey, VC. I don't mind people to do that. And I don't want to sound snooty even saying that, but I just want it for anyone who watches.
Agreed.
I don't want to limit it to the secret organization here or a club member. And some people may, I know there are some people in the quote vinyl community that think it's this precious little flower that you have to have rules and regulations, and that's what you need to do. And if you don't do that, you're really not a member of the vinyl community, which I think is ridiculous. But if that's what you want to do, it's right for your channel, right for what you want, all the power to you. But of course, if I'm making videos, I want, as many people to watch. Now, I don't make every video. I make a lot of videos still, and I don't expect everyone to watch every video. In fact, the ones that I love, I did a video a few months ago on, to me, the two most interesting artists in the past quarter century, to me, artistically, and they are Beck and Bjork. And they came around the same time, give or take a few years. Obviously, Bjork was a little earlier with the Sugar Cubes and went on as a solo artist. And I think they're very creative, whether you like every record or not.
Sure.
And I did on that, and I got some decent amount, but I thought it would be a bigger thing for people to watch, and I took the most time with it, and it wasn't one of my bigger ones. A whack-a-mole runs bigger than that. There's random picks, or I do a series which I really love doing called "It's the Music Stupid," where I showcase 5 records just from my collection, various genres, years that I really like, and some people for a while were taking offense me mentioning the word stupid. But it's taking off from when Bill Clinton ran for president.
James Carville.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the economy stupid. And it's really an internal thing. It's the music stupid. Maslov really talk about the music. We want good pressings, we want good sound, but after a while it comes down to, if you like that Clash record, if you like that Throbbing Gristle or Beatle record, yeah, you want a good sound, but at some point, come on, just enjoy the friggin' music. Don't wait till that ultimate pressing is not the way you should enter the hobby, as far as I'm concerned. That's just a personal opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree with it. I think, especially, I don't want to call it the age of the audiophile, but as the audiophile focus has been more tight or more elevated, as people are, to what you said, chasing the best of the best. To each their own. Everyone has their own motivations or inspirations for collecting records as they do.
Well, there's a little bit about that. And I know it's a cliche, but the same 50 records are pressed over and over again. Dark Side of the Moon and Supertramp and Steely Dan. Steely Dan hasn't been pressed a lot, but the really good sounding records. All the power to that. I love that. But at some point, check out. There's a lot of great friggin' music out there, and there's a lot of good music coming out now. I'm an old guy, and I don't keep up with every new artist or genre, but I buy a lot of new records and I'd rather buy 5 new records than another $150 UHQR or One Step record. I'd rather buy 5 new records of new artists because I already have those legacy albums already. I don't need a box version of it.
Sure. So through your videos and through your activities, be it joining other people's live streams, or you've even hosted your own live stream. I remember you talked to Ingroove, Mike Esposito, and stuff like that. Do you feel a responsibility to do some homework? A lot of it for you is like you've lived it, right? Like you even talked about your experience in San Francisco and coming into a really provocative and very interesting time in popular music, right? But when you're making videos or you're joining live streams, do you feel there's a responsibility to help be inclusive, to bring, like you said, to have a wider appeal than just the quote unquote vinyl community?
No. I don't feel a responsibility. I do what and I get snarky, and I even occasionally talk about politics. It explodes some people's heads, and I get that, and they can move on. In fact, when I do that, I try to say at the beginning, hey, I'm going to talk about politics, skip this video, because people say, I came here for the music. I don't want to talk about la-di-da-di-da-di-da. All the power to you. I grew up in a time, tumultuous time too. We're in that time right now, as a matter of fact, in so many ways. And I think music is a big part of it, whether it's folk music, protest music, punk music, hip hop. I'm not a big hip hop, but I know the realities of music on a cause, whatever the cause is. I don't feel a responsibility. I do want to get it right, but I'm not one of those slick channels that does the great,
high production value,
camera, high production value. And I respect those, but to me, it's about my personal story of this music, of these records. I do want to get it right, and when I get it wrong, I try to fix it. And sometimes I get a little dyslexic or I flip a date around. I do, I'll look up, if I'm doing a feature on an artist, I'll do a quick kind of look up to refresher to see, make sure I got my dates right
Sure.
when this album came out. I don't get in details of John Lennon was born when the bombing of
9:13
Liverpool in
a.m., yeah.
1940. But I want to get that right. And if I get it wrong, people literally, as you know, right away, someone's going to comment. And I appreciate that. But sometimes there's 10, 15 people commenting because they don't look at the previous comments that someone already did. And that's fine too. I don't take that personally. It's when they get all wanker on you and they, but I don't try to feel this responsibility that I owe anyone anything. I appreciate my audience. I try to be there. I don't respond to early on, I've been criticized that I didn't answer everyone's comments. But when people say good work, you want to give them a heart. But at some point, what do you say? I try to always answer if someone asks a specific question. Like, do you know if they did another album by or something very specific? That's a question. I try to, but what happens is in some videos you get a lot of responses. Then I'm working on something else by then, and then I have my work. And of course I really love that people are watching and the videos, but I don't always get back to everyone. I'm surprised. I mean, I'd love more people to subscribe, and I'm surprised when you look at the analytics. I think there's 40% of my viewers are subscribers, 60% are not subscribers.
So you're looking
at come on, push that subscribe button right now. Go down to Mazzy's Music and push that subscribe button. I don't say that every time though either, so I'm not one of those with the logo subscribe graphic. I know you do. I know, and I'm not against that. I just don't. Yeah, it's not part of my. Maybe it's my brand, my image. Also I click the box. I am monetized, but I click the box so there's no spots, no commercials in the middle of my videos. Now I'll make 25, 30% less money for that because of that. But I don't like commercials every 3 or 5 minutes, whatever it is. And all the power to other people to do that. I'm not going to, dump on someone else, but to me, that works for me.
Yeah, it makes sense. And it's, to me, to speak to my end on that, I just throw in that graphic because I don't like speaking about it because I don't, to an extent, I want the video to be what it is, what I want to talk about. And of course I want more subscribers, conversion, all that stuff, but I'm not there. I don't want to pander, right?
And no, but anyone doesn't have to defend themselves for it. It's just what I want. And I get that. I mean, some of the greatest channels I like have things like that. And it doesn't deter me. I don't, if someone does a Patreon, I don't really care. I don't like diss them. But of course, when you grow up in the VC, if someone mentions they went to Patreon, they get like all hell breaks. Not Patreon. I don't do any of that. And, and some people I know, some good friends of mine have done things like that. And, they get like, oh my God, you're monetizing. Give me a break. YouTube's going to monetize you anyway. Yeah. You might as well, we're giving them content that they're making money on. Google's making money on all of us, whether you monetize or not. So if you can get a little more so to pay for some records or something, or feed your cat, you need to do that.
Control your destiny. Yeah, I believe. Last thing before we go off of YouTube is, so recently through YouTube, if I'm not mistaken, tell me if I have this wrong, you connected with a viewer who asked you to help him sell or liquidate his record collection. I know you affectionately are calling it the Dizzy collection, and there's a reason for that, but we'll move past that. But how has that been? And then also that led you to, I believe this is right, sell records at your record show for the first time. Is that fair to say? And how was that?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Well, let me go back a little bit. About a year and a half ago, maybe it's coming on 2 years. My friend Coleman, who I've known 50 years this year, we met. I got my first record store job. We're probably it might even be this month, 50 years ago exactly, March or April. I got my first job, Warehouse Records, WHERE, a California West Coast chain at the time. In San Francisco, I got a job at the record at the warehouse. And when we got to Christmas time, we needed Christmas help. And this guy Coleman used to come in. He was a regular.
Sure.
And we started talking. We connected because of the Jefferson Airplane and psychedelic. And he was really into R&B and soul. Was just learning guitar, and he always wanted to start a soul R&B band. And at Christmas time, we were looking for bring on extra Christmas help. And I suggested Coleman. We hired him. Coleman and I became fast friends. He actually started a band in San Francisco Bay Area called Pride and Joy. They lasted 40 years. They were a party band. They had 4 great black singers up front. He led, booked the band, the guitar. They had, drums, sax, bass, the whole great R&B stacks, Motown covers, weddings, bar mitzvahs, corporate shows, the whole. I mean, they were big in the Bay Area, big events. And he literally about 2 years ago got sick right when, maybe 3 years ago now, right as COVID was hitting. He had these headaches and he ended up getting a tumor, and some months later he passed away. So pretty fast. And I was one of his closest friends, obviously his closest record friend.
Yeah.
And he had a massive collection, and after he passed, about a month later, his sister reached out to me. And I knew she would, and said, what are we going to do with this collection? And I said, well, you can sell it to stores, and here's what you do. And if you want some help, let me know. You'll get about this. And then I was talking to my friend Coffee Dave about it, and he goes, why don't we buy it? He actually said, and we came up with a thing. I went to his sister and said, well, maybe we could buy it. And I made her an offer. And I said, you think about it. She goes, I don't have to think about it. That sounds great. She didn't think of it. She goes, I know you'll do right. If you can sell some of them, keep what you want. So anyway, after that, we drove them up here from the Bay Area, and there was about 5,000 plus albums, another 1,000 or 1,500 amazing stuff. Between Dave and I, we kept about 1,500 records for our own collection. And then we sold some. I had in the garage people coming up here, visiting, and we did a online YouTube sale, and we sold it. We got our money back. We made maybe a couple grand profit, but we kept record. We didn't do it for the profit.
Sure.
We put these cards in every a picture of Coleman and a little bio how I knew Coleman.
Nice
that went in every record that went out. And it was I'm not really a seller or a flipper usually and stuff. And anyway, this is a long story to your question, I know, but cut to a few months ago or right before Christmas, this guy calls me. And I've been getting these, you get robocalls, and I don't usually answer if I don't recognize. And I picked it up, and the guy goes, Mazzy, I love your videos. And, he kind of greased the wheels. He said, I love what you do. I have this record collection I want to kind of see about getting rid of. And I stopped him because I liked what you do with Coleman. And I said, I'm not a flipper. I don't buy collections, but I could give you recommendation. I know people here. He goes, I don't want to go to the stores because they give you 10 to 20 cents on the dollar. And he goes, I understand that, and I don't, it's not really about the money, but I like what you did. Can you come and see me? So finally, after the holidays, I went to see him. He's 30 minutes south of me, and he has like 8 to 10,000 records in boxes. He has like 100 framed Fillmore Avalon posters. He's got all this memorabilia. I mean, it was nothing in any kind of order or genre. And we had a talk for a couple hours, and I said, well, and I don't buy collections. He goes, I don't need to, but maybe you could sell a few, or you could. I asked, here's what I asked him. I said, are you emotionally attached to these records? He goes, not at all. Are you doing it for the money? Not at all. I got own my house. I don't.
Yeah. What was his motivation to sell? I've always wondered.
He says, I haven't played a record. I don't even have a record player anymore. I haven't played a record in 25 years. He was going in the 70s and 80s, just bought when records, or not the 70s and 80s, I guess the 80s and 90s. When records were cheap, into early 2000s, up till 95, I think he said. He lived in the Bay Area then. He bought records and he'd buy multi-copies. There was like 10, 12 copies of Rolling Stone's Some Girl, half with the Lucy cover, half without. He had some really rare stuff, some funky scratched up stuff. And I said, well, we had a talk, and I said, let's try something. And he had these OJC's original jazz classics, 340 of them, more than half of them sealed, all in shrink. And we did the first auction, and we sold out, and we made, and he said to me, he goes, I gave him his money. We did a split, and he said, I just loved, that was the most enjoyment, better than any sports event. He likes seeing his collection sold. It's an entertainment thing for him. He got more money than he would even splitting it
naturally
that way, but it wasn't about that. So every week, a week and a half, we meet for lunch. It's like a mafia meetup at the strip mall, kind of sandwich pizza place, and I get some box of records.
Paper bag of money.
We're doing the third auction, and we're doing them as auctions. The first one was as sales, and that was easier because all the OJCs were basically one label, and everyone knew what they were, pristine copies. Now, of course, OJCs are being, like all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but people are
in fashion,
recognizing them more, and they're going to be reissued, some of them, and so we sold a lot of records. It's a lot of work doing these sales because packing and shipping.
Of course.
The record show was nice because people buy it, you take it, you don't have to ship it. But it was fun. It was fun meeting people. And so I had some comments on that video when I talked about the experience. I shot it from the point of view of the seller for a change. And I just showed people. And someone said, no, but nobody's buying records. Well, when they were buying, I wasn't filming.
Right. Yeah. Not filming the transactions. Yeah.
Exactly. So, but people were great. A few people recognized me from YouTube. A few people really nice. I noticed a lot more young people and women were there at that show in Seattle. It was fun, and we did pretty well. I mean, so I'm going to do another auction coming up, and we'll probably do these. We're planning on doing them once a month, as long as he wants to do them. Get some of his stuff. The other stuff, the dumper stuff, he's selling off cheap to record stores. But I mean, I got some amazing stuff coming through, and every time I'm tempted to keep more and more, which I'm trying not to do for my collection. But it's amazing. It's a great collection. And he's not aware of the quality, or he doesn't know anything about dead wax or versions, or he just bought copies because he heard of some artist.
Sure. That makes sense. Well, before we get off collections, I do have to ask for the folks scoring at home, because you told me when I visited you, how big is your actual collection?
Well, my record, I think I have some between 6,000 and 7,000 LPs. I have another maybe 4,000 CDs. I have a CD wall. I'm not against compact discs. I went through I had about a 15 to 18 year hiatus. In 95, I had 6,000 albums. And I purged 2,000 of them because CDs were the better thing. And somebody at Amoeba Berkeley came over, who I used to work with actually in my record days, and bought 2,000 of the records for $2,500. And I built these shelves, but I kept the other 4,000, and they were in storage for 18 years during the CD era. And then, of course, around the late, I'd say 2008, 9, I pulled them out again, my records. And I didn't totally stop buying CDs. It was a special project, but I just decided, I shouldn't have sold those records. And I probably since then bought most of them back. But I probably had a pristine Led Zeppelin RL. I bought all these things right when they came out.
Happened.
So I worked in record stores. Maybe not when that game came out, but I got early I bought that album like the week it came out, So I don't know, but it would have been worth $1,000 now or something, pristine.
Yeah, they go for about that. I think I have a VG, and it's like a $300 record for sure.
Yeah, but it's funny. People say, there's always about value and what's this worth, and I'm about 2/3 of the way in putting my collection of Discogs. And it's interesting to know for insurance purposes,
yes, very
for
important.
my family, my son, if he, what he does with the records. But I don't really think of, now this value went up and the value went down. I don't care. I don't buy them because of the value.
Yeah, I feel like when COVID hit, I feel a lot of the speculation part of the hobby really kind of grew, right? Because people were at home, discretionary income, weren't traveling. I know for our house, we were putting our money to paying off our mortgage, but a lot of folks were buying records, buying upgrades and equipment, buying this, that, or the other. So, yeah, I feel there's a lot more speculation now than there was 4 or 5 years ago pre-COVID.
Well, all that, between MoFi and acoustic sounds, that kind of got in. People feel burnt, which it's unfortunate, but if you're going to invest in records to flip for that only reason, I don't feel sorry for you. I'm sorry.
Well, you hit on something. I want to go for the next topic, and that's, our collections and what we do with them toward the end of our life, or when we're ready to move off of them, that sort of thing. And you had mentioned your son, and you'd mentioned this when I visited you about, you have like a escape plan for a lot of your collection. You've talked with the archivist about, hey, something happens to me, grab those OJCs, all that kind of stuff.
No, grab the Music Matters jazz record.
Music Matters. I'm sorry, Music Matters.
She's got a key to my house. She lived here for 3 years. between, during COVID stuff, and that she worked for a major label, and now she and her boyfriend moved south a little ways. But she's a big music collector and helped me get into Discogs, and like said, Mazzy, you got to put your things into. I applaud her for doing that. And she has like the keys to my collection in a way. My son Joseph loves music, but he's not really into records. He doesn't have the space and the time and I mean, obviously he gets first grab at it, but maybe I would have the archivist help guide to either sell it, to do something. I don't know if they have the chance to do something like I did. You'd have to have unless you have a YouTube channel with some audience, to do it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Or to give some away, or there's some stuff very valuable, stuff that's not so valuable, like everybody's collection. But that's it. I mean, he gets the first refusal in a way, and if the archivist helped and did it, he would get any monies from the sale of it, and I would have her take a cut or percentage or something. And I've kind of thought about that. I got to write it down. I know.
Well, I was going to say, have you guys had like a formal? Because like I know when I talk to my mother about like wills and stuff, it's just kind of like
not of
somebody
that.
knows.
I mean, not on that. And I should I know people put it off, which is the worst thing in the world. So, but my family knows that the archivist would be a good person, a good trustworthy person, at least to talk to. I mean, physically, she's not going to box up everything and do it, but she could kind of act as a producer and figure out what to do. So I'm not going anywhere yet, I hope.
Well, hopefully you got another 20 or 30 left in you, and that's knock on wood. But all in, the reason I brought that up is when we visited you, you had kind of mentioned that. It kind of got me. I internalized that because for me, my son, I really hoped he would get into team sports because I loved sports growing up, and it'd be something for us to bond over and, hey, let's go to the game, all that stuff. Didn't happen that way. He hated team sports. He loathed them. He hated me coaching him, all that stuff, some resentment, etc. So I thought, and maybe this isn't your case with Joseph, but obviously you're very passionate about music, the history, the storytelling, all the stuff that you demonstrate on your YouTube channel. But the impression I got, right or wrong, was maybe Joseph doesn't share that same kind of passion. He's probably passionate about other things, graphic design and video games you had kind of mentioned. But how as a father, how does that make you feel? Do you wish that he had some of that kind of passion that you guys could connect with? Or?
Here's what I feel about that. No, sure, I'd love him to be into music. I mean, he's into music, and he got exposed to. I used to, when I was in the car playing CDs, I would be like, I would always play CDs for him, and I remember early on like playing like Tom Waits, and so early on when he was, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, whatever it was, he would start doing the piano's been drinking. He got the 6, 7-year-old doing the like Tom Waits voice because he thought that was hysterical.
Uh-huh.
I think the first huge album we connected with when he was 10 was Radiohead Kid A. I remember playing that in the car, and like I love that Radiohead record. Excuse me. And he just we fell in love with that record. He got into Radiohead, of course, later, Radiohead with guitar. The Guitar Game with Creep and all that stuff was
Rockstar, Rock Band,
yeah, rock, whatever it's called, yeah. But I would play like, who's that? Bob Dylan. Who's that? Johnny Cash. Who's that? Dean Martin. He loved Dean Martin. And I'd play punk. I'd play everything, Beatles and stuff. And then we got to have this running joke like, who wrote that? Whenever I'd say who wrote that song, whoever did it, it would always be Bob Dylan happened to write it. Just like Jimmy, all on the Watchtower. Who wrote that? And so he got to know. So he's aware of all that kind of music. Somebody got into. I remember the two bands right away that he couldn't get into when I was playing was Talking Heads and the Smiths. I think he likes one now. I think he likes the Talking Heads now, but not. I can't remember which one.
Sure.
But I don't mind him not like being it because I love when someone has a passion, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be music. I mean, my thing is music. His is into animation, into illustration, into art, the art world, commercial art world in a way, graphic novels, things like that. And he's kind of freelancing. He's trying to get a full-time gig in it, with an animation house maybe, of storyboarding and stuff. And he's really good at it, but it's getting the right connection and all that kind of stuff. So I don't care. I just like that he's passionate about something, and he was passionate about that when he was very young. And luckily, he went to a school in San Francisco, a public school called Soda, School of the Arts. It's like Fame, in the movie Fame. It's a public school, but you have to audition to get in. So in drama, music, filmmaking, he was in the filmmaking division, but doing animation, theater, orchestra, all the, set design. And so every morning you have your math, science, history, and in the afternoon you have your major. And that was the best thing for him because you do all your stuff in the morning, and when you're sleepy in the afternoon, you don't want to study. You're doing the coolest thing you're into.
Sure.
And so he didn't cut class. He was, a good student. He loved it. And he learned all these programs, computer programs, and just drawing things. He would go to these figure drawing classes on the weekends when he was young, nude drawings. And, which was great, when he was 16, 17. And he just had a passion for that. And so I, totally support that, so him not being into the records. I did buy at Record Store Day a couple years ago that Gorillaz box that came out kind of for him, but it's sitting here sealed because he doesn't have a record player. But at some point, if he wants it, because the Gorillaz, if the whole animation thing.
Of course, yes.
The guy from Blur, and what's his name?
Damon Albarn.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I like them too. We used to listen to those, the first few CDs when they first came out.
No, I think that's important because I was talking about exposing your son to and quizzing him, right? I would do that with my son. I still do it, just kind of to make sure that I'm passing down some of this tribal knowledge of, one, having relatively good taste in music, but two, subject matter expertise, right? All that said, have you guys ever gone to concerts together? Have you ever had the live music experience together?
Oh yeah. We went to a handful of concerts. What's great about the Fillmore in San Francisco is all ages, and you can walk around. So I think one of the first ones went to see was They Might Be Giants. We both got into They Might Be Giants, and that's a kid-friendly band as well as adults like. And I was into They Might. To me, I like their early stuff, independent stuff, but I like Flood, and their first major label with Elektra. We had to see them at the Fillmore, and I had a friend who, I don't know if you ever heard of Leo Laporte. He has a thing called Tech TV. It's huge online, like podcast, simulcast, and he's a tech guy, a radio show. We studied theater together, acting together in the late 80s. And I've known him for a year. I haven't seen him in a long time. And at their studio used to be a block from my office in San Francisco. And They Might Be Giants did an in-store or a interview there with 12 people in the audience, and he invited Joe and I. So we saw him that day and that night at the Fillmore. So that was a great show. We went to see the B-52s together. We went to see the Eels. He loved the Eels together. We went to a bunch of shows at the Fillmore. Ringo Starr, All Stars. Him and I went to see Paul McCartney. So he's seen two of the Beatles, which it's at his age. That's kind of really great. He's 32 now. So,
and does it charge you up? Because I know, when I took my son to Metallica is one of my favorite bands, and I got to take him to that first Metallica show, and seeing him enthusiastic about it, it kind of stirred a different set of emotions because I really felt we were connecting, but also I was proud that we could share that experience. Have you ever, those shows you took Joe to, did you ever feel any of that?
Yeah, it was just fun hanging out. It was fun sharing one of my passions with him, and he got into it. So it wasn't like, oh, you dragged me to a rock and roll.
Exactly, that's the worst thing you want, right? Yeah. Awesome. Well, cool. Well, I appreciate you sharing that, Mazzy. We're at the end of the presentation. We're gonna go lightning round. So these are just fun questions, just kind of quick fire. And if you want to elaborate on them, feel free. There's no guardrails here. But one thing I wanted to ask you is, when you're record shopping in the wild, do you still, with such a large collection, such a long life of collecting records, do you ever still get the thrill of finding a record in the wild and going holy shit?
Occasionally, not often. And I don't have grails I'm looking for. I don't keep a list of things I'm looking for. I have a sense. I obviously having Discogs or some of my collection on Discogs, I can look it up because I know what I have. Sometimes I may not know the exact pressing off the top of my head, or if I have a stereo mono, which I don't always, the multiple copy things I used to do, I'm really off it now. There are very few exceptions. Although, even though I said I don't like the UHQRs, I did buy and enjoy the two Bob Marley ones that they put out. I love those. I don't give a shit about the boxes, but I love the records and recordings. Did I need them? Probably not. But I realized that though I purged some Marley albums back in the '90s, and I bought a lot of them back. But just coincidentally, those are the two I didn't have. So I figured, oh, might as well get these two because it's probably the best I'm going to get.
Sure. Sure.
Right now. So no, I mean, I like going to record stores and like picking up things. And lately, between the Dizzy collection, the Coleman collection, I'm getting labels now, not a lot, but several labels sending me some records to review and promo. And it's funny. There's been a little discussion. Some people say, "Oh, you're selling out. You're getting free records." Well, historically, reviewers, record store shop employees, owners, radio people got promo records. That's why those friggin' promo stickers you see on labels, those were free records to someone. And it doesn't mean I have to do a review and like them all. Is that payola? That's bullshit about that. That is a part of the business. I mean, we are now, whether we like it or not, we don't want to call it. I am an influencer because I have, every time I do, even my whack-a-moles or my five, it's the music stupid. Mm-hmm. It could be a 40-year-old, 60-year-old record. Someone will say, "Oh my God, I got to check that out." And they'll mention I went to buy it. And that's not selling some new artist and making money. And if I like a new thing, I just did I got from Kraft, the 10 LP box by Wattstack. I had a friggin' great time over the last several weeks listening to it. And I spent on last Saturday an entire 7-hour period listening to it straight through for the concert experience. And I friggin' loved it, and I talked about that.
That makes sense. Cool. So next question I have for you in this lightning round is, I don't know if you heard this, but Jamie Lee Curtis recently came out and said that, for older people, and I can appreciate this because it can feel laborious sometimes going to a concert, especially midweek, right? So she had an idea of, why don't some of the bigger artists do matinees? It's an interesting idea. What do you think about that?
I get that. I still go see a lot of live music. I mean, not as much as I did before COVID, but I do see, mostly clubs. I don't go to a lot of big shows because I've seen all what I call the legacy acts. So you go to clubs and you're right. Your main act goes on at 10 or 11 o'clock or something. And when you're an old guy, but I manage, I get that. But that, someone will say, well, don't people work during the day? I guess a weekend things,
Well, I think her comparison was like theater, right? Like she said there's a matinee show and then there's an evening show, right? So you have these an option.
Good idea. Do a Wednesday and weekend matinees. I mean, I remember going to Days on the Green. Bill Graham used to put out at Oakland Coliseum, the baseball place where the A's played. All through the mid '70s, they would have three huge acts. Like I saw Fleetwood Mac, the Eagles, and Peter Frampton
on the same bill. Wow.
Yeah, same. And there was like probably two other maybe smaller acts early, and it was a whole day. It was a day thing. It probably went into maybe 8 o'clock at night. I can't remember when it ended, and it was all day. And that's when I was in the record business. So I saw Led Zeppelin that way. All my Led Zeppelin shows, ironically, I did Kezar Pavilion, I guess, in '73, and in '7 or 8. Their last two shows in America at the Oakland Coliseum, Days on the Green, day shows, Led Zeppelin during the day. So those were summer things they'd have in the Bay Area. And, there's a lot of summer festivals here. The Woodland Park Zoo has these, summer festivals with bands playing when the families can come at the zoo. And I think I saw Echo and the Bunnymen and Violent Femmes a couple years ago at one of those. And there's a few things like that. So it happens around in different cities. Obviously, you're luckier if you live in a metropolitan area where these things happen.
Think about Chicago. Well, even the festival life, right? Like there's some bands like Lollapalooza 10 years ago. I saw the Cars at 2 p.m. Loved it.
Well, that would be an interesting thing for some clubs to have, like weekly matinees if the bands are available. If they, half the time the bands don't friggin' want to wake up and play at 2 o'clock or noon or something.
Right. No, that's true. No, I thought it was a very interesting idea, so I'll throw it at you. All right, last one I got for you, Mazzy. So we're kind of in a very fruitful time in record collecting in that there's such demand that you've got new pressing plants finally getting opened up. You've got younger people coming into it, all those sorts of things. Do you think that this quote unquote bubble will burst at some point, or do you think it'll go the way like it did before, and that there'll be another, streaming is there, and streaming's probably the giant, especially for the younger generation, the giant way to consume music. Do you think there'll be some new technology that does it all over again and puts records on the back burner?
Not in the same thing. I mean, ultimately, streaming is the easiest for most people. I have issue, I get the concept. Most people don't care about the fidelity, and of course, there are high res places that do it better than others. Most people really don't care about fidelity. Most musicians, it seems, don't have high end audiophile systems. I like listening to music in my car or on my iPhone, occasionally too, and I have no problem with that. I think the record industry will. I think it's leveled off a little bit, but it keeps increasing. It'll increase. I think it's hard to judge during the FOMO time or during the lockdown time. That was an aberration. How it exploded,
an outlier. Sure,
everything happened, but I think it's great. I think things should be in print. Again, it's vinyl is a small, physical is a small percentage. Most people want to do that, but I like to support the artists in that way. I think personally, streaming is too cheap. I know people hate it because they spend $12 on Netflix and $12 on YouTube and this, that, and all. It adds up. It does. But for what the music is worth, I think people have no value now. Should music have a value? There's a whole philosophy. Oh, the music should be mine. I grew up with the Beatles. How can Paul McCartney charge me so much? I think it's a bunch of bollocks. He created some wonderful things. His family deserves it, and it doesn't matter how much he got. Artists should get what they can. Now, then we get into the whole ticket drawn thing or Ticketmaster. That's another issue. I get the people being pissed off there, but I think it's going to be consistent. It's leveled out. Records will be available faster, and somewhat, but we'll see. I like that people can have things in print. They don't have to rush to buy it this weekend if they're not ready financially or in the mood. So I like that. Like the old days. You go to record store, you didn't have to buy Led Zeppelin 2 today. You could buy it next year or 6 months from now.
Agreed.
Keep it in print if they can.
Love it. Well, Mazzy, that's all I got. I appreciate you, carving out the time. Appreciate you, obviously, hosting my family and I when we visited you 2 weeks ago. But really enjoyed the chat. I obviously have enjoyed your content for years. Enjoyed getting to know you now that I've started making videos. That's one of the great things about coming over to being on this side of the YouTube experience is you actually can connect directly with folks. And I feel like, and maybe it's always been this way, but at least my experience, I feel like there's been more of the in-person meetups, which I think are really fantastic.
I love it. Yeah, I enjoy it. I get people coming up here for this Seattle Music Expo, what it's called, the audio fest. It's more gear. And like a handful of people are coming up here in Seattle. And
I hope you're charging them rent because, I feel bad because Tim got croissants on his. I think you offered us beverages, but then Tim was offered croissants. So I see next level of starting charging these visitors rent if you can.
Yeah. Bed and breakfast.
Absolutely. Get those croissants and charge them for it. Love it. All right.
Exactly.
Well, Mazzy, thank you for your time, sir. I hope we can do this again soon.
It's been a pleasure. Mazzy loves you.
All right, man. Talk to you. See
you. Take care.
We cover it all. We cover it all. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, find us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Vinyl Community Podcasts and on Twitter at VC Pods. See you next time on the Vinyl Community Podcasts.